Thank you so much for tuning into the Woman to Woman podcast, a conversation for women like you, smart, successful, curious, and interested in being your best self. Join both Sarah and I as we discuss topics that women our age are actually interested in, with both of us being candid and often having differing views.
As coaches, we sprinkle in advice and tips, along with humor and vulnerability. We hope you feel like a fly on the wall, with two friends. Let's entertain and inform you, and welcome you into our friendship.
We appreciate you pressing play and spending some time with us, wherever you are in the world.
Let the magic happen. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited for that episode as we have our second guest. Amira is with us today to talk about emotions and feminine leadership. What a great topic, because seriously, and she will explain it way much better than me, but this is what the world needs. So let's dive into that beautiful topic. Good morning, Amira, because you're based in Dubai, right? So good morning to you. How are you doing today?
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Amira. So, Amira is an emotional body coach and is focusing at the moment on female leadership. So, welcome. And may you please start with telling us a little bit about your story and how you got into this field of work.
Yes, it's always a very interesting question, and I feel every time I answer it, it keeps evolving. And where I would start is as an emotional being, as a sensitive being. I really didn't have much guidance on how to process emotions, and I thought feeling emotions and processing emotions were the same thing. And what I would realize and find myself in situations where I'm either numbing, suppressing emotions, or I am oscillating to the opposite of overreacting. For example, suppressing anger and then it turning into rage, and I'd be just oscillating between these two extremities. What also made it very interesting is that I am naturally emotional. So I feel everything around me. I feel deeply, and I felt like it was a curse because I just had no tools, no guidance at all how to navigate our emotional landscape and this inner realm within us. It felt it was so wide, like an ocean, and I'm either on the surface or I'm drowning in my emotions. And this was primarily my childhood, and then I had an accident when I was 10 years old. So then I died for a couple of minutes, and I came back and. Again, what I realized after my accident is how I developed a very, very, very high capacity to dissociate from my emotions and to dissociate from the world. And then that coping mechanism supported me until I hit my limit. So my body reached its capacity to suppress, to numb, to not be present, to not feel, until my body was like, like that's it. I cannot not feel anymore. It reached its capacity, and that's when I started to get physically ill. So I'd get chest infections, I'd get skin rashes, and all sorts of just flu and stuff. And interestingly enough, is this was, of course, before 2020, and I was in corporate and I was working and like doing my executive MBA, and I was so in my go, 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 like I'm here to do big things and I just don't have time to feel right now. I mean, feeling, and then I go into my feelings and then it's like, oh, I don't know what to do with them. And then I react and then I go into shame and guilt, and it was just so confusing. But then what happened is I got chronic fatigue. And I stayed in bed for 3 months, coughing blood. So I got really, really like pneumonia, like extreme chest infections. And before that last chronic fatigue, I was in cycles. I felt stuck in cycles of getting a chest infection, then recovering, getting a chest infection, and then recovering, which made me feel it kept triggering my accident wound. Like I felt in my body like I'm being punished or something. That because I have a tracheostomy tube, then I am, it's like I signed up for a life full of sickness. And I was just so angry. And then what happened when the chronic fatigue happened and I had no option but to stay in bed for 3 months is I really had to face everything I've been running from. So I had to face those anger and resentment and this sense of punishment, like everything was on the table for me. And this is when I started to go deep into studying metaphysical anatomy, so the science of the impact of stored emotions on our physical health and well-being. And I was like, oh wow, like there's language to what I'm feeling. Like someone else understands me, and it makes sense. And I went deep into the root cause. What is the root cause of ailment and diseases in general? Because again, what I would find is this repeated cycle of feeling better and then hitting rock bottom again, feeling better and then hitting rock bottom again. And what I found is that I am like not even interested in symptom management. For me, I really wanted, especially when I was put in a position to be in bed for 3 months, I was like, I want to pull it out from the root. I want to understand what is the root cause of physical ailments and diseases. And only to understand that I was being prepared for 2020, because what happened in 2020, it's people were afraid to breathe. So when 2020 happened, I was like, I kind of giggled from inside, not in a way that it was, but in a way it was like, oh, it all makes sense now, because what happened in 2020 is that the whole world was in chaos. And the dominant vibration was a fear of like being alive or being dead, really. And until 2020 came, after like being super focused on understanding the impact of suppressed emotions on our physical health and well-being, I also went into studying with several mentors about our shadows. So again, what we suppress and how it impacts our mental health. And then this is where I go into where I am right now, is how it impacts our relationships.
When you were in bed and you were trying to understand these emotions, were you alone trying to understand this emotion, or have you called someone to help you there?
Beautiful question. So, and it links exactly. So I was alone. I like going to a hospital. They gave me all this medication and embedded alone. Like that's the thing with science. Like it has its limitations like any other tool, right? But I hit the limit of science, because it's like you're taking antibiotics, it's not working, so stay in bed. And I remember texting my brother. I was like, yo, bro, like, I'm not sure, I want to live like this anymore. And of course, him receiving such a message, he's like, whoa, like, it's okay, sis, everything's going to be okay. And how anyone would react to receiving such a message. And to your question, Sarah, is this is what happens. And for me, is the big message, even of 2020, is isolation. When we start to go deep into pain, we go deep into separation and isolation. And in isolation, pain fosters.
So how did you reconnect with the world then? Because I kind of understand the period of isolation that happens in healing, but then there is another part, where you start to reconnect with the world kind of as your new self. Is that how that worked for you?
Yes, and as I studied the root cause, for me, the root cause of suffering is separation.
Mm-hmm.
And then separation can be on many, many levels. So are we so numb from our physical body that we only start to connect with our body when we reached extreme fatigue, exhaustion? Like, are we so, like, what happened to the middle stage of being sensitive and being connected to the subtle sensations in the body? And then again, separation when it comes to relationships. How do we feel separated that we start to become defensive and protect ourselves from the other? So for me, what I've discovered, and along with my mentors, is that really the root cause of disease and ailment is separation. And the more we cultivate being attuned to our body, being attuned to our needs, being attuned to each other, is when we actually cultivate connection, intimacy, freedom, and much more.
I totally agree with that. So I think a lot of people might be thinking, how do you start creating that connection? First of all, with yourself, your emotions, and your health, because I'm assuming that's step one before you sort of start being able to connect to others. Is that in your experience and your teaching? Is it connecting to yourself first? And if it is, how do we start doing that?
Yes, for sure. For me, it started with myself because as an extrasensory, I feel others so well, but I realized I was using that as a mechanism to run away from myself, from how I was feeling. So I was so concerned again with the other. So we start with ourselves, like tuning through practices into subtle sensations in the body. And sensations are like the feeling of a numbness, tingling, contraction, expansion, like electricity, like any slight or even nothingness, right? Some of us feel nothing, which is similar to numbness, but becoming like making it a practice. Like at first when I started, I was like, oh, this is so simple. But actually it's in the small everyday is what shapes our lifestyle. So how I started is I started to when I woke up in the morning, I just put a hand on my heart and a hand on my stomach, and I'd be like, how am I feeling right now? And I completely drop into, and again, this is more of like the feminine essence, drop into surrender, drop into receiving, drop into allowing, because due to my lifestyle, I was very much in the decision making, initiating, forcing, goal oriented. So I would go into trying to feel my sensations using my mind, meaning I'm trying to make sense. And it's like words is not the language of feelings. The language of feelings is sensations. And at first, that felt like another language until I committed to feeling and sensing maybe even 3 minutes in the morning. And with that, we become more and more attuned because it's a muscle that now we are utilizing.
We need to normalize the intelligence of our mind and a completely separate intelligence of our body. Do you know what I mean? We think that they don't actually talk to each other. Like, they're different. It's like food and drink. Do you know what I mean? And we really need to normalize that. So thank you. But anyway, Sarah, go ahead.
I have the main problem of not being able to balance my right and left hemisphere. And that's a huge problem because I don't know how to listen to my heart. You know, when we listen to all the sayings out there saying, yes, you need to start listening to your body, you know, start feeling your body. Seriously, I don't know how to do that.
Ooh, Sarah, on point. I mean, I would go nuts. I would go literally nuts. Like, I'm just like holding my chair when someone would tell me you are your own healer. The answer is within you. And I'm like, if the answer is within me, what am I doing over here? You know, like,
Yes.
say something. And when I was in my Vipassana in Nepal, like, it was so funny. Like, the Buddha teacher would tell me, curly hair, you know, like, tune in, listen. And I go with all these questions because I'm super curious. And it just reminded me of that. And here's the thing, like, you said something that's so beautiful. It's like feeling into my emotion wasn't working. But here is the thing, when we do not feel safe, and that's why I would say safety is number one. When we do not feel safe, we will not allow ourselves to feel. And like, again, I thought I was the queen of feelings. I mean, I'm a Cancer. I have 300,000 emotions. Like, I'm like, wow, I feel. But I realized is I didn't feel safe in my body to allow myself to truly, genuinely surrender. So I'd be trying to feeling protected. I'd be trying to go deep into an emotion, and then I'd go up into my mind and start to go into many, many stories. So I wasn't really surrendering. And it made me feel so frustrated because emotion is energy in motion. What happens when we do not know how to feel our emotions is that they get stuck. So in our nervous system, like, we have a state of sadness or depression, which is a state where it's of immobility, right? And then we have a state of anger, rage, frustration. That's a state of moving energy, but it's stuck. And that's why we might even start sweating. And when we do not feel safe, and what I see quite often with clients, and I personally experienced myself, when we do not feel safe, we will believe that we're feeling, but we're not actually completely surrendering into the emotion.
So the question is, how do we create safety for ourselves to feel and hold our emotions?
Yes, and I would say co-regulation. Find someone who provides you that container. And then this is what links to what currently I am focused on, is women who are in the leadership position, CEO bodies. We are so used to being our own container that it becomes even more, I would say, challenging to allow someone else to hold space for us. And whenever I go to any mentor, they'd be like, your money's refunded, because I'm up in my mind, outsmart. Like, I'm like, what else do you have to tell me? And they're like, actually nothing. And I realized I was using this coping mechanism to protect myself from opening up. And co-regulating, finding someone trusted, a practitioner, where they can hold space for you. Because here's the thing, and we're going back to the root cause, for you to not be doing it on your own. And the root cause of suffering is doing life on your own. And we're not meant to do life on our own.
I completely agree with that. We are not meant, I mean, through my healing journey as well, I have done a lot of healing, learned a lot of healing modalities. But when I really suffered, all what I have learned could not even help me. The only the only things that could help me is knowing that it exists somewhere, healing modalities that is going to help me. But it was not even in my field of competency. So I really needed to go out and seek for that modality that would be relevant for me and that would resonate with me. I totally agree that we need people. I mean, if we want to move and elevate our life or evolve as a human being, we need others, because only us will not be definitely enough. Because I've experienced it, and I know that if I have to go in my next stage of suffering, I know that I will need someone to help me getting out of it, because my own skills will not be enough.
Yeah, and Sarah, I resonate so much because, again, it's this pattern. It's a repeated pattern of I've got a belief that I've got life on my own, or that if I seek support, I'm not good enough, or everything I've learned is not working. But that's just farther from the truth. The thing is, we are evolving beings. Our natural state is evolution. And what does that mean on Earth? Evolution is expanding our capacity, expanding our empire. And with expansion, you cannot expand on your own. And whatever skills I've learned have served me in level 1, but now I'm expanding to level 2. And with expanding to level 2 does not mean that I look to level 1 and this is what I would be doing. And I'd be like, oh, I've done so much work. When is this going to end? Or the skills I've learned are not supporting me, but actually they are. Got me so far. But here's the beauty is there's always so much more. And for me to access the abundance, my expansion is to not do it alone. And Jane asked me, like, when I was in bed, how did I find people? It hits me that I am trying to do everything on my own, that I set an intention, and it could sound like, really, is that it? But yeah, because our thoughts, our intention, we are vibrational beings, right? The universe responds to our subconscious and what's within us. And when I set an intention that I need help, and the help I'm receiving is not working, it's reached its limit, I started in my bed, right? Find mentors out of the blue. It felt like it's out of the blue, but it really isn't out of the blue. In my bed, I couldn't move, and who supported me and understood me and held me and that was my next level of expansion. And it's not because that I'm not good enough or I'm not capable enough. It's because it's incompassionate, it's unkind to try to hold all of life by myself. Like it's just not self-loving.
I love that. I have a question that you mentioned something which I think is extremely important for everyone to understand. At the very beginning, you said something like feeling and processing emotion are the same, which are totally. I totally agree with that statement. But it's true that sometimes, when you look at what is going on on internet, and you found those motivational and influencer telling you, yes, stop repressing your emotions, you need to process your emotions. It's just so complicated names, right? And I feel that it's very important that we make a distinction. Can you really make a, I mean, you say that it's the same things, but can you go a little bit deeper into that idea?
Yes, sure. It's super important. Thank you, Sarah. And here's what I've discovered myself is we are all multi-layered. And for me, the first layer is even to acknowledge that I want change, for example. Because if I don't acknowledge, there is nothing to work on. So the first thing is to actually be like, oh, wow, I have tingling sensations in my body. And acknowledge it, right? And then the awareness. So acknowledgement, awareness. But awareness is, like you're saying, people read posts on social media. Awareness is still in the mind level. It's cognitive. And awareness is like an aha moment. I read something that resonated with me, and that is powerful, right? But that's a layer. And that's where I find the resistance to do embodiment work is because and that was my experience as well. I'm super brain masculine dominated. Like, I want to understand, I want to reason. So I thought it was enough to understand even the root cause of my pain, but that is so different from the other layer, which is embodiment. So after acknowledge, aware, and then comes embodiment. Embodiment is to viscerally work on the nervous system, on the body. So embodiment to experience. So it's not just a concept, but rather an experience. It's an action, it's a doing, it's a being of what does sadness feel in my body, not what does sadness feel in general. Because, and again, I've experienced this myself and I see quite often with clients, if I'm in a happy state, happiness for me could be a tingling sensation in my body. But happiness for you, Sarah, could be a warm feeling in your stomach. So how we feel, how we process our emotion is very unique. And the difference between, just to come back, feeling and processing is to embody the emotion, is to be in the emotion, is to completely surrender into the emotion and not do it on your own. At first, I mean, right now, me and also with clients, they have practiced enough that they can feel and attune and process emotions. But when we are first starting, it will feel like I am going deep into the ocean.
Okay. I want to know more about what makes you work with a woman.
And like, and professional women, like you were saying as well.
Ooh, so so like it's been cooking for a while, but 2 months, actually a month or 2 months ago, I was in an initiation. So I had an experience of being in an accident where I was cycling and I hit a little child. And the father was just so enraged. And he came and he was just full on rage and anger. And what I've experienced is I was standing in front of like someone who's double my size, holding the bike and throwing it like super out of control. And what me, Amira, I would usually do is either I do two things. I'd either shrink and not speak and not share my voice, or I would go into the other extreme and go head to head. And I'd be like, show me what you've got. So I'd go into my fighting, masculine shield mode, right? So what I found happen was, which was wow, is I stood there reminding myself I'm safe, I'm protected, breathing, and actually transmuting his anger and rage. And for me, I was like, wow, like the power, because again, as I was speaking, like when Sarah asked about the concepts, I was like, yeah, women, water, transmutation, all like it all makes sense, but what does it mean in the real world? What does it mean on the ground? What does it mean when we're faced with chaos? What does it mean when things are out of control? And it's then when I felt like I actually got to experience transmuting intense energy. Anger and rage is intense energy directed at a position, at a person, at one direction. And it was just so clear to me that women were so powerful, we're so impactful, and we're so needed. And what I myself was doing in corporate is I would either like not share my voice, feel like I don't have space for me, or I need to fight my way, or I'd find myself projecting anger and rage and frustration because I'm not heard. So I'd be oscillating between these two, or I'd be too bossy and too demanding and them. And a strong belief is we needed to sacrifice our feminine essence because emotions and feelings are associated to weakness. And actually, our emotions and our sensitivity is our inner guidance system. It's our power. And it's how to connect and how to understand the wisdom behind the emotions and to learn how to channel, because emotions or energy is it's all life force energy. It's so powerful. And it's okay, now how do I direct this energy in a meeting? How do I direct it in conflict? How do I direct it and impact the world? Because for me, we are going through major change into rewriting literally what it means to be powerful, and like moving from a hierarchy to co-creating. And yeah, I'll leave it there. There's so much to it, but yeah, this is what really inspired me is we are powerful beyond, and it's this beyond that scares us. And it's like, okay, now how do I work with it?
Something you said there, which was really interesting, is can you give us an example of how you use your feminine power in conflict? Like me, for example, I'd actually love to know like one way, because in conflict, I can want to go head to head. So do you have any tips of how we can step back and not feel powerless, but actually feel a bit more powerful and in our feminine?
Yes, Angela. Oh, it's such a dynamic that I like be in so much. And so going back to the incident I had 2 months ago, is I did not. So here's what happens when we are faced with danger or pain. and we are in our fight mode, is we lose, or we have a belief that I'm gonna lose myself if I surrender, if I calm down, I'm gonna lose myself. So when we're in conflict, it's important to, again, it all goes back to the root cause. It's important to stay connected and breathe and remind myself that I am safe in my body.
Yeah.
And from there, so in this incident, what I did was I started to give him his power back. I started to remind him of his power. Like, for example, I'd be like, I'm sorry. He'd be like, I don't accept your apology. I'd be like, you have the right to not accept my apology. So it was through conversation, but again, I'm trained to have such conversations. I studied it of why do people even go to war? It's because of this slight single word. But to even more simplify it is when we're in conflict, come back to our body, breathe, remind ourselves that we're safe. If we feel we are overwhelmed with the conflict, remind ourselves that we can step back, regulate ourselves, and then come back. So the answer would be to regulate ourselves is priority number one.
Okay. Instead of regulate to their anger, right? That's a really good point. So to separate yourself from getting caught up in their thing. Okay, I understand that actually.
Exactly. So you are responding rather than reacting.
Yes. Okay.
And when we separate from ourselves, when we lose ourselves, because now we are so into their emotional realm, we feel chaotic. We feel like we've lost it. So then we don't feel grounded. So then we are either defensive or attacking, but we are reacting to them, and they are in control. We're no longer in control of our responses. Does it make sense?
And that's why you feel so bad afterwards, because you weren't yourself. You were in their pot of emotion. Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense to me.
It's true. How do you think a woman can apply all of that in the corporate world? What would be the benefit for her?
So this is easier said than done. But where I would start, again, women who are in a leadership position, entrepreneurs, like women who are really aware of their impact and power, is softness. Because it becomes what I've experienced myself is soft means weak. And what I cultivated is actually softness does not mean that anybody can walk on all over me. Softness, actually, to be genuinely soft for me means to be safe, to be so safe in my body and to have high standards, because for me, the capacity to have an open heart comes with an expanded high standards of my own values, of being connected to my values. So for me, my values are being connected to my heart, acting from my heart, and knowing my yes, knowing my no, feeling safe to fully express. So going back, I would say we would first start with softness, because what I see and personally have experienced is in the corporate world, especially, or in any leadership position, we want to become men, and that just does not work for us, and it exhausts us, because it's like the anger example. It pulls us away from our essence. It pulls us away from our power, and our power for me is our softness, our flow. And that does not mean that I am not precise, I'm not certain, I'm not assertive, but soft. Makes sense.
I can see it from a corporate perspective. We are all behaving in our masculine energy because this is what the corporate world is desiring to see, which is sad, but this is our role to educate them, right?
Beautiful.
And we have Amira to help everyone. And Amira will help those female leaders, right? That's what you're doing.
And yes, and Sarah, you said something so beautiful. So it's all for me revolves about owning our power and taking ownership to our emotional states. So becoming so attuned, and this is where the power lies, is we become so attuned to how we are feeling that I take responsibility for how I'm feeling. So when I am in a conversation with another, I am not projecting how I'm feeling onto them. I'm attuned, and I know I can be like, by the way, I need some time. I'll come back to you, and to follow up and actually come back. It's a lot of I teach a lot of this in what I offer. It's not a one solution. It's a lifestyle, and it's a process, and it's a beautiful process. Because when we come back to our essence, it's actually what the men are craving. Yeah. Because it's when it's not when, one of the reasons is when we became out of balance, it's impacting women and men. And that's why I feel, for me, when you asked why women, is because this is my responsibility in a woman's body. Again, it's taking my power back. It's focusing internally rather than pointing fingers and expecting and giving my power away. So, and that's exactly what I was doing in the accident I had. Is I took my power and I was reminding him of his power, of his free will choice to choose, to feel, and that is so powerful because. Literally, his anger and rage transmuted. We didn't hug each other. He was still angry, but it's a very thin line of acting from pain or responding from pleasure, responding from our hearts. And the more we practice and the more we take ownership and the more as women we soften our edges. And that doesn't mean that we drop our edges completely, especially for those of us who have experienced physical hurt or emotional hurt, is softness, is to be kind on ourselves, because I feel we become so hard on ourselves. Yeah.
That we create the separation. Yes, definitely. We closed the loop, I believe, into from where we started, where you were talking about separation. So I really like it. Thank you very much, Amira. Is there anything that you would like to add we may not have asked questions, but you think that it's an important message that you want to put out there?
This podcast has been so powerful. Thank you so much, Sarah and Angela. I mean, I feel a core belief in women is sacrifice, and really, when we start to attune to our nature and our essence, we start to let go of this belief of sacrifice, because we can be leaders, and we are leaders, and we are impactful, and we can also open up to receive and be nurtured and be taken care of. We can have it literally all and even more. It's just we are learning together how to own our essence.
Amazing. We're going to put in the description of this podcast all the links where we can find you and find your work. Okay, so make sure that you send us the link. Maybe Angela already has it. But yes, we're going to make sure that people knows where to find you if these episodes resonate with our audience. So thank you very much, Amira, for your time, for your knowledge, and especially for your sharing. That was seriously priceless. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your energy. Like I felt that today. So
Thank you both. This was so beautiful, and the mix of the jungle and the home, like you're so, like you guys have such a unique touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and every time you listen, we truly appreciate it. And if you would like to follow me or learn more about my work or get in contact with me, please go to my website, which is angelajanecoaching.com.
And if you want to know more about my work, you can go on sarahmeng.com. All the details are going to be listed in a comment below. You can also follow us on social media, Instagram or Facebook, where we are sharing our daily tips.
Bye.
Hope to see you soon.